It takes 3 years. That first year, you're like,
3 years.
where do they keep, like, where do you keep the highlighters kind of thing? And then you're trying to figure out where everything is and how processes move and where the connections are. And that second year, you're like, okay, I've got this. I can see where A and B move together and how it fits. And by third year, you've got this. You're making the connections, you're making it happen, and you're looking ahead and bringing all of that, and the people that you networked with, you're able to put that together and build upon it. So it's kind of that first year of like, what? Second year is like, okay, I've got this. I can start building. The third year, you get to run.
Hey, everybody, we're back. It's Over a Pint Marketing. You've got me, Pat McGovern, Director at New Biz over at Acedia. Joining me, as always, my main man, Mr. Kurt Lingle. Kurt, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Pat. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Today we've got on Jean O'Toole. Jean is a woman I recently met and really impressed me. Right now, Jean is heading up the marketing over at Alverno College, local institution here in the Milwaukee area. But before that, she came from the East Coast, and she was the executive director at the New York Beef Council. Those are just two of her recent things. She's got a crazy background, very, very interesting. Really looking forward to getting her, having her come on here and talking to her about her background and what she's been doing. Jean O'Toole, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Patrick, and nice to meet you, Kurt. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Cool. Thank you for coming on here. I'm really looking forward to getting into this. Before we do, Jean, we got a little bit of a thing that we do. It's called Over a Pint for a reason. We have a little shtick here. What's in front of you? What are you drinking? Talk to us.
Right now, I repurposed a Snapple bottle. It's got some lemonade in it. If it was later in the day, possibly would be, definitely over something else. But so lemonade's going to have to do for right now.
Jean, lemonade's going to have to do. When it's after hours, when it's a Saturday, what do you like to enjoy?
It's either a nice glass of wine or a rum and Diet Coke. So one of those two, depending on the temperature outside.
Okay.
There you go.
Mr. Lingo, what about you, sir?
Well, Gene, on this show, we always promote local. And so it doesn't matter if it's water or lemonade or coffee or brew or food, whatever. We've promoted it all. So I'm going to promote some local here today. I'm juggling. I've got Stone Creek coffee. I've got local water out of the tap, but I'm also, and since we are recording this at noon, so no one really knows when this airs, we could be recording this at prime time, but I have here a third space, Heavenly Haze, which I'll crack open for sure later on when the workday is done, and I'll enjoy one of these, maybe two. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that's what I have. Great having you on, Jean.
Thanks.
Awesome. I've got a Modelo in front of me. I got a can of sparkling water, and I just finished a cup of coffee, so I'm well hydrated here. Let's get going. Jean, let's start this way. Let's start with just give us a little background on how you got into the marketing space, if you could.
I basically begged my way in. No lie. I was in food service. I was with a contract company for 20 years in multiple different areas. Started out in like the feeding college students. And then when I moved, I was that in Arizona, literally spent a summer feeding Boy Scouts. And that's how I met my husband, who was not a Boy Scout, mind you, for all he was an adult, definitely of age, met him there. But when I moved to New York from Arizona, I got into healthcare in a variety of different areas, and food service and healthcare, long-term care, environmental services. And then literally the New York Beef Council, public relations, promotions position was open, and I begged my way in. I reached out and I got a pushback of, well, you have no marketing experience, you have no agriculture experience. And I'm like, yeah, but this looks like something I could do. It's food, it's meat, it's beef. I've dealt with food for, 20 years. And so just kept nudging, and then I found out that they had brought somebody in, and they were like in their final interviews. Well, that fell through, and I found out by accident because I was going into the nursing home I was working in one day, and somebody's like, "You've got to meet so and so. She's with the beef council." I go, "Get out!" Now, mind you, at the time there's only 2 people working there, so the chances of meeting somebody from the beef council in my world was like slim to none. And they
Mm.
said, "Yeah, the interview fell through. Reach out." So I reached out again, and I said, "Hey, this is what I could offer." And I kept calling. And finally, she's like, "You know what? Come on in. Can you be here tomorrow at 9?" I said, "Sure." So I came in at 9 and she got to meet me. And she's like, "Can you come back at 3? We have some board members here doing some interviews." And walked in there, and I will never forget the answer I gave is, "What agriculture experience do you have?" And I said, "I grew up in Wisconsin, and I live next to a retired farmer right now." I go, "That's it. That's all I know." I said, "However, I'm a consumer." And I said, "I worked with beef or food for 20 years." And I said, "But I'm a consumer. So if you can pass it through me, I can pass it to the real consumer as well." And I think that's what got me the job. So, and I spent 17 years with the New York Beef Council with
Wow.
no agriculture experience, no public relations experience, no marketing experience whatsoever.
That's a great story, Gene. It's
That is a
great
great
for
story.
a a number of reasons, but the one that
Mhm.
sticks out to me is, you often hear somebody doing what you did when they're pretty junior in their career. You've already I mean, by the time you went to the beef council, you just said this, you'd been in the food service business for 20 years.
Hmm.
That says a lot about you and that says a lot about you. So so you get to the Gene, what is working there like? I don't know, like, what are your goals like? What is it? Describe that picture of what it's like working at the Beef Council of New York.
So there's 44 state beef councils in the United States that the over umbrella is National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and the best brand I could give you is beef. It's what's for dinner,
Yep.
recognized by about 85%. We were funded by the beef checkoff. So my beef producers in New York State, anytime they sold a cow, so Kurt, you sold Patrick a cow, a dollar went to the state it was sold in. As a state beef council, we kept 50 cents of that dollar, and the other 50 cents went to the national programs. There's like 22 checkoff boards. Dairy has one, eggs have one, soybean, corn. It's a producer driven funding aspect for promotion because producers are in the field, they don't have time to promote, and this is how they pooled their money to put it out there. And so I went in as in PR and public relations, and after about 11 years, I became the executive director and then ran the Beef Council for 5 years. But the main goal was to increase beef demand. In essence, I really didn't sell it. I didn't have a particular brand. We had, according to the beef checkoff, which is an act and order under USDA, that we could not promote one brand or type of beef over another. So we couldn't promote certified Angus beef over grass-fed, grain-fed. It was your choice. And um, I couldn't put any brands out there. And if I did, I had to keep it very equal and level field. So, and all beef was beef because everybody paid checkoff, internal, anybody domestically, and then any imports all paid the checkoff, whether by per animal or by pound.
Wow. You know, if I could just echo Pat what you said, I find that story very impressive. Gene, I think it speaks a lot to your DNA, and for me, I'm always fascinated when guests come on because everyone's got a story, and in a very short amount of time, and then we'll continue on. I'm getting a real good taste, and I think our audience too is what Gene's DNA is all about. That you know what there is a lesson. You're right, Pat. That's just you're assertive, and I love the twist on experience is subjective. What experience means to you means different to me. So wow,
I
I
think that's the
love the
biggest
story. I
thing.
love it.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing is that y- you can bring a skill set to, and this is what I kind of like about Alverno is that here at Alverno they don't. they don't teach memorization and then you regurgitate what you know, on ABC, true, false, you know, tests, is that they teach life skills. It's the like the 8 abilities here at Alverno, and they're teaching communication, problem solving, analytical thinking, aesthetic experience, putting all those pieces together. And it's those soft skills that if you come in with that, and to be able to go into different sectors and bring that leadership and bring in those skills, just teach me what you do and your acumen and your acronyms and all that. And I have the problem solving ability. I have all of this. And that's hopefully what we're, you know, that critical thinking and putting the pieces together and just figuring that out. And I think that's really important for, you know, anybody, and to be able to morph and mold, and hopefully I bring that opportunity, you know, to anything. And I think I probably taught myself more of that from going from the beef council where I knew nothing about anything. I asked a lot of you know, they say there's no such thing as a dumb question. I asked it all. And then even coming into higher education. But yeah, I can cut a mean steak. I can grill a really good steak. My husband, through my time there, he goes, "Wow, your steak cooking prowess has really improved." But yeah, it was an awesome experience. I got to do a million things creatively that people and met different people through the beef industry. It was cool.
Gene, so many questions here. So let me do this one. You're in the food service, you get the job at the Beef Council, and you're in PR. How long did it take you to get your sea legs underneath you?
Um, Total, and this is how I would tell anybody, and still today, it takes 3 years. That first year, you're like,
3 years.
where do they keep like where do you keep the highlighters kind of thing? And then you're trying to figure out where everything is and how processes move and where the connections are. And that second year, you're like, okay, I've got this. I can see where A and B move together and how it fits. And by third year, you've got this. You're making the connections, you're making it happen, and you're looking ahead and bringing all of that, and the people that you networked with, you're able to put that together and build upon it. So it's kind of that first year of like, what? Second year is like, okay, I've got this. I can start building. The third year, you get to run. And when I took over as ED, and the individual I hired for my position, I told her then, she's like, "No," and she goes, "You are dead on." And the same here. I've been here at Alverno for a year, and it was like, I even asked the other day, I said, "What's that acronym?" I'm playing acronym bingo for higher ed, and I go, "I don't know what this means." And I got to fill in that spot on the brick there. And it's like, okay, I get it. And now it's like, all right, this is what we should do, shouldn't do, and this is the direction we should go, and have the confidence doing that because you've just observed, you listened, you saw where, you know, you can make those strategic connections. And I think that's important in wherever you go. You got to be patient. And I think that where we are in the generations that are coming up is that they job bounce a lot. And just when they get their that stride, sometimes they move on. And then it's like, God, hang on just a little bit longer.
Right, right. Um, I want to ask you one more question about beef in just in
Sure.
general. Um, this is somebody who's looking at the beef industry from 30,000 feet away. You, you, there was a period, and maybe we're still in it, that it seemed like beef was just getting a bad rap.
Yep, it did.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just like, hey, cut down on the amount of beef you eat. More recently, and I would say within the last 5 years, there seems to be a renaissance. It's like, wait a second, there's a lot of beef that's a really good high in protein, and now with kind of a lot more influencers, a lot with YouTube, TikTok, Insta, it seems like it's having kind of this renaissance where it's coming back. You're shaking your head like, yeah, it was. Is that like, was
I
that
think that
happening?
I think that focus on protein overall and the benefits. I mean, we always talked about zinc, iron, and protein. Those
Yep.
are, you know, and when we brought in we were able to label the micronutrients when we did bring in those influencers because we always talked about it ourselves. And I probably enlisted about 60 social influencers being on the East Coast, I had them. I would bring them on farms in small groups and give them that experience and connect them, and allow them to tell the story, and tell the farmer, the beef producer story, and get them to hear it and hear that authenticity. I don't know how many walked away and went, wow, he's really passionate about what he does, and how they treat their animals and their land stewardship, etc. Um, I think that when we were properly telling the story, and we were hmm, me forcing my producers to tell the story, I
Mhm.
think that opened it up. There is a really good book out there. It is called In Meat We Trust by Maureen Ogle. I am a massive reader, and the consumer from like 17th, 18th century to the 21st century hasn't changed. They want quality, they want it quick, they want it affordable, and they don't want to see it, smell it, or deal with it, but they want to know everything about it. And we haven't changed. It's been always that way. And I think once we kind of shared that, and the authenticity of it, I think kind of helped, but we were able to take some of that, and do our own research and put out what those benefits are and how we equal and how it doesn't increase cholesterol and how it doesn't do all of these things, and that it is really, really good. But at the end of the day, it's about moderation. And I think that was the message
Sure.
that we needed to do, is like, you don't need to have beef for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Come on, people. It's moderation. And it's all producers, I have to say. I can say this now, I'm not just beef, but anybody in agriculture, I'd go in a foxhole with them all day long, in that sense of what they do and how they do it. And it was beef before Christmas presents. If there was an animal that was having an issue or some issue on the farm, it was that farm, that issue before Christmas presents, before anything, birthdays, you name it. And
Well,
that's impressive. You don't see that.
Yeah.
right,
You know,
right.
what I picked up on that, Gene, which is interesting, two things, or the one word I just kind of scribbled down, the authenticity. You know, it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't sound like you were really like, quote unquote, even though we always are, you weren't really selling something versus, it was more or less, you were just telling the real
Educating.
story. Yes, educating the authentic story. And so often that's where brands get it wrong. It's like, you were building authenticity and telling the story and educating. And I guess regardless what category you're in, there's a lesson in there. But that's pretty cool.
Right.
Very
I
interesting
mean,
here.
yeah, to be that storyteller and to that nuance of it, and that's what we're doing here at Alverno, is changing the dynamics of our marketing department, to telling about our story of what Alverno is, who Alverno is. And I think the big question that is often forgotten is, to answer is how. How do we do what we do? Everybody wants to know why. Everybody wants to know what's your why, and what do you do? And then a good old Simon Sinek, my, love of my life, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. But at the end, we need to tell them how we do it. And I think that's where the authenticity connection is this is who we are, how we do it, and then the why and everything, it's all mingled in. But I think sometimes we forget how. We don't
Well,
answer that.
Pat, I'm gonna let you, but I'm really intrigued, so I'm fascinated. So I got to know the story because I don't know. We're going from beef and we're going into education here real quickly. So Pat,
Yeah,
lead this because I want to
yeah,
hear this, Gene. I
yeah.
want to hear this.
Let's make that leap.
Sure.
And I do, if we have time, I do want to circle back to your work with influencers and the Beef Council. But Gina, yeah, you and you told me the story before, but the leap from the Beef Council to higher ed, it's understandable. I could see, like, but it's so. Talk to me. How did you
How
end
did
up at Alverno?
So after 3.5 decades away from Wisconsin, the pull to come home to be a little closer to family, was there. So then throwing out probably 100 resumes and saying, somebody hire me. And I have to say that Alverno took a leap of faith. Oftentimes I'm seeing in higher education that they hire journalists and they hire that aspect of it, and to
Yeah.
bring in, I don't want to call myself a pure marketer because in no way, shape, or form I am, but a marketing vision and focus to help put that out there. And that's how I got here to Alverno. They took somebody that had no higher ed but had marketing, a fresh eyes, I guess, and taking that leap and that chance of that fresh eyes, and looking at that differently, and that I definitely look at things differently in that space is it, I give Alvern a lot of credit for taking that chance, and it's been fun. It has been a fire hose like nobody's business, but I think we've done some humongous, incredible things here and reorganized and quit the marketing department where it needs to be properly. I think that's what's important. But that's how I got here. Is I wanted to come home, and I'm back.
You certainly like challenges. Again, let's just recap. Food service for 20 years.
hmm
Then you jump into the beef council. You run that for how many years? You were with the
17,
beef? 7? Okay. So another, now you're in higher ed, right? So,
right, and
okay.
I'm only 25 years old.
I know I don't understand the math, but it works out.
That
Yeah,
That
I
I
want to hear
love
that
that. I
story.
love that continually says something about you,
Mhm.
Gene. Okay.
Does.
So you get the job. You're now running the Marcom for Alverno. Talk to us talk to us about your first 90 days, Gene. I mean, what was it like? And I really want to get into part two of this question is how do you begin? You got a lot of things coming at you. How do you begin to prioritize, right? Because there's so many fires, there's probably
Mhm.
so many things, but you only have so many resources. You only have so much, so many hours in the day. There's only one Gene. You have a staff, but how do give us an insight into that like, you know, that beginning part for you?
I think you go in with the mindset you're gonna have to do a lot of listening. You kind of have a picture of what a place is like when you come in because maybe you scrub their website, from the interview and the questions that you asked. Some of the things that were like, this doesn't make sense. And using common sense, using your listening skills, asking questions, and just being inquisitive. Again, I wasn't afraid to ask the goofy questions or the blatant questions because I'd asked them for 17 years. And every year, every day at the Beef Council, I was like, so what's this? And not being afraid to do that. And I think oftentimes people are afraid to ask the
Yeah.
obvious question, and I'm like, okay, hello, can you explain this to me because I'm really not understanding, and I got a thick skin. I can handle that. Why don't you know this kind of thing? So, I remember one particular meeting, they were just so angry and how what they felt wasn't marketed, and I was like, wow, this is I can feel it. And it's like, well, give me a chance. I hear what you're saying. Let me take a look at what you gave me and let me put the pieces together. And I think that's it. It's just kind of taking a look and how do the puzzles go and strategically and maybe I don't know, connecting dots and it just kind of in my mind they kind of move together. But yeah, a lot of listening.
Y- Gene, the one thing I'm impressed hearing your story, and I love how you're talking about like how you were able to parlay, like, we talked about like, okay, maybe black and white on paper, I don't have the experience per se, but I do have the experience. I like that part of the story, but I think it says a lot about, the organization slash brand that you're working for. Like you were just saying, Alverno, you know, um, let's stay in the current. They took a chance, and I think it's very easy for an organization to say, you know what, let's get a vertical thinker. You know what, we're in education. Let's get someone in that just that's what they do. They're a marketer in education, higher ed, whatever. But I think it says a lot about the Alverno brand when they're like, you know what? No, it's like I mean, I'm writing down. I want someone that's going to challenge us. I want someone that has fresh eyes, that's going to listen, be inquisitive. Obviously, have the brains. I think it says a lot about, obviously we're here to talk about you, but also I think that says a lot about Alverno.
And I think that is the essence of Alverno and who they are and what they do, and they are open-minded to new challenges. I mean, like I said, going back to the abilities, what I found is that they're the essence. It right now, ironically, is the 50th anniversary of the abilities. It's that outcomes-based assessment learning. And I remember being here for the interview and walking in the hallways, and I came around this corner and here's this wall dedicated to the abilities. I go, what is this? And the student explained the whole abilities and why she came here, and that was the reason, and I said, "Why is this not on your website?" And she's like, "I don't know." And I'm like, "I scrubbed this website." And I think sometimes in higher ed is that we're so proud, they're so proud of what they do, and they talk about amongst themselves, and they forget that outward aspect. And I think that's what marketing does, is that, and this is what the marketing department was, and a lot of times in higher ed is that they're the internal print shop of them. Hey, I need this one sheet, I need that and that. And I came in and I go, why aren't you talking to the people out there? And to switch that around and actually take those abilities, and we put it on the website. It's there now, and we created this little as I reach for it, this little talking piece and explaining it, and I just got some feedback that somebody read it the other day, and they said, finally, somebody connected the abilities and to the point where I can understand it. And it's a phenomenal thing that Alverno does, and it's their catalyst to change. But yeah, to take and to be able to invest in someone and to be able to think different. When I said, hey guys, maybe you should do some tables at the local quinceañera and wedding expo that El Conquistador is doing, because we're an HSI and here's some future students. We have a chapel, and they were like, wow, we never thought about that. And it's keeping those options open, and like I said, where are we not? Where could we be, and where do we want to go? And answering those questions too.
So, Gene, how talk to us a little bit about your process for doing just what you said there, right? Like, how do you list those out and understand where you think you've got the best bet, the best opportunity? I know there's no guarantees, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of how you balance it all. Like, right? Like,
Yeah, I guess it's looking at where the connections are. And maybe because I'm partly Italian, is how can we connect people? And that was some of the thing in, like, even the beef council, and that's where I learned it, is where can beef be? And where isn't it? Where's that opportunity that nobody really thought about? And then the same with Alverno is, where can we be? What space are we missing? Whether it's sponsorships or organizations. So if I was working with nursing and creating that nursing campaign, it's looking at anything and everything nursing in the state of Wisconsin, and can we have a table there, or can we be part of their board, or can we put our students there, or can they be, hey, come to Alverno, we've got open space and free parking, check us out. That type of opportunity there. And then whether the mental health aspect or education, where are we missing? Um and 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 seeing if we can make that happen. If we can, great. And if we can't, then there's a missed opportunity maybe on their part, and we just happened to see it we were ahead of the game.
give us a breakdown, Gene, of a day in the life at Alverno for you. Like, how do you dividing up your time? And I know you're going to say, "Hey, there's no one day that's the same." I get it.
No,
Kurt and I,
no.
but
Yeah, so I've got a president pile here in communications, and we have a brand new president,
right.
Christy Brown. So hey, what are we going to do with that? And then some of our outreach for our programs and promoting that, depending on where we are in the cycle. And then there's let's see, what other piles do I have here? Oh, working on our website and bringing that up. And like I said, we're launching a whole new kind of social media outreach, and kind of investing in those students and getting them to support us. And yeah, there's different piles all over the place, and it's like, all right, what's coming up that needs a little bit of attention? It's multitasking, a lot of plates on sticks and spinning around, but you whittle away at it, and like anybody does.
You talked about being focused outside, but you have a fair amount of, I'm guessing, internal communications about what you're doing as well. How much of your time is spent just communicating back to staff and so forth about just what's going on in marketing and just communicating some of the things that you just have going on within the college?
I mean, weekly team meetings with my group, meeting definitely with advancement, which is the alumni program, or admissions as to, okay, where do you want to go? Or, hey, I found this, or hey, I saw this fundraiser, and it's also taking a look at who else is doing other things. And sharing that information of, hey, did you see this? Sometimes I think that part of marketing needs to make others aware because they're kind of in their silos and it's opening them up. So it's constantly saying, hey, did you see this webinar? Did you see that? This Here's a tool or a third party tool that might be able to help you advance that. When I was in the beef industry, I didn't necessarily look at our competitors to compete against them. I looked at them to see what I could do a little bit differently, and also looked at, even in our own category, what did they do and how can I repurpose it, make it a little bit different? So yeah, when you have 17 different colleges around here, it's, do I want to do what they're doing? Oh, that's really nice, but maybe who's doing something else, maybe in southeastern United States or the Southwest, and how can it be just a little bit different so I don't look like everybody else, that I might be able to catch somebody's eye?
Gene, what are the biggest differences that you've seen coming from the Beef Council in New York to Alverno? I mean, obviously these are so different spheres. Are there are there crossovers? Are there, hey, same problem over here
Yep.
as it was over there? What did you see as like similarities? And what did you see as just big differences?
The differences are, I work in a building versus being out in cow fields, or pastures. I think that's it. I think the people and the problems are the same, but they're different in that respect. I mean, it's something I just basically I was talking to somebody about that recently about what's the same and what's different. Um, Education, I'm still educating. I'm
Mm,
working with educators, but before I was an educator in that sense, so I kind of get that. A customer is a customer. Granted, a customer is somebody that might buy beef, but a customer might be in that chain of where that beef industry is from, the producer of the cow calf to the processor packer. So you have your internal customers. So I have my internal customers of my faculty, but I also have the customer that I'm trying to attract, which is the student, or the alum to come back and invest in their college. I think that um, in beef or in agriculture, oftentimes beef producers get paid once, maybe twice a year, depending on what their focus is. Croppers, it's once a year, once they harvest and, there's a hailstorm or there's a bad frost too early, then boom, they're done. There's a lot of investment and not a lot of
yeah.
return. Where here in higher ed, you probably get paid a couple times a year, in the fall semester and the spring semester. So making those ends meet. And I think it's like that scale, but I think the dedication and I've seen in both sectors and what they're trying to achieve and the passion that they have are unequaled, in those respects. And in both where, here you have a private college and in agriculture, it was less than 2% of the population that feeds 100% of the population.
Right.
And, and everybody's competing for, you know, that one person to eat their product or learn from their product. And everybody has the same thing to offer. It's just a different perspective of whether it's chicken or beef or Alverno or another college or university experience.
So let's take that and let's pull on that thread a little bit more. I think you mentioned, Gene, there's 17 colleges and
I, I,
universities in the area.
or it's in Waiku or whatever, but I know that there's a really concentrated
Yeah,
amount of colleges here
Mhm.
in Milwaukee.
right, right. You've got it. So competition is tough, but as Kurt and I talk to a lot of different organizations, not in even higher ed, everybody's got more competition than they had 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? And it
Sure.
just keeps getting
I mean,
more
it's
and
like
more
driving down
intense.
the street and you see Burger King and McDonald's and Culver's and I mean
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A. I mean,
Exactly, exactly. And you're talking about other colleges like brick and mortar, but then you also have to talk about online possibilities and so forth. Anyway,
exactly.
Gene, why Alverno? What's the reason people are coming to Alverno?
I think that they are really true to their mission. They are mission driven, serving the underserved, the unseen, the unheard, the minority serving. What the demographics that are inside this building match the demographics outside of this building, and they have for
Mm,
137 years. The two nuns that came in and started Alverno did not take no for an answer. I kind of admire that, in a
yeah,
sense, because I don't necessarily take no for an answer either. When I heard the story, I was like, this is incredible. I think that how they look differently at education, 50 years ago, the sisters, they went to businesses, GE, et cetera, and said, what do you want from us? And we're going to ask you what kind of student you want, and then we're going to take and we're going to base that learning so that we give you that leader and that educated student so that they can walk in your doors, sit down at the desk and start working right away and not go, so how do I talk to this person next to me kind of thing. Um, they feel challenged, they're empowered. My mission in a sense, after my why, for lack of, after reading Simon Sinek's Start With Why, I did it through a leadership class through Cornell, and it was leadership in agriculture, and it's to give voice to those who are often unseen and unheard. And I did that in beef production because producers were not seen and not heard, and often our students are in the socioeconomic area of Alverno are often unseen and heard. And to be able to give them that voice and give them the power that someday that they can lead in this community, I think, and what Alverno does is fits right into that mission.
that's cool.
That's a great elevator. I don't want to call it elevator speech because I think it dismisses the authenticity of what you just shared, and I think you summed it up really well. What I like as I continue to hear your story, Gene, what I like is there's this underlying philosophy that you just have from when you started your career to where you are now, and I think it's easy to point out differences. Like, how easy is it? Like when you're going from beef to education, it's so easy to say, well, this is different or different category. And, throughout this whole conversation, you've been about, you know what, I'm not going to point out the differences necessarily. I'm going to point out where there's common ground, where I've got, these are the things that I bring to the table that are going to help you regardless of where I came from. And it seems to me like, I think that's the rule of life in a way. It's like we should be looking for common ground, but it seems like for you, it's like, it's a philosophy that you're living and breathing and believing, and it's like that's just the way it is. I'm always looking for the common ground versus like it's too easy to point out what's different or it's like we all can do that.
Right, and I think it came from working in beef, in USDA, and that whole thing is that we could not talk bad about another protein or another brand or anything that was not allowed in it. And so I'm not going to point out the others' failures or, hey, I can do better than them on this. This is what I can do. And connect with those, and like you said, find that common ground. I always say, how can we make that ripple effect bigger? And those connections that go back to what you were going to ask about, Patrick, is those influencers. How can I make that ripple effect bigger? How can I amplify and spread that out as far as possible in making those partnerships and connections? So it's not just me talking about it, it's me. And, so like for instance, when we did State Fair and for the Beef Council, we went from putting meatballs on a toothpick and saying, hey, have a Rosina meatball. Oh my God, hundreds. And I said, I can't do this anymore. So what we did is we built a stage and we started cooking. And I could have just cooked beef, but then what I did is I went to, at the time was part of New York products, and Wisconsin has products as well. And I looked at the website and I said, you know what, I need some ketchup for this recipe and I need this and all these products. And I said, can I have a donation? And I said, I will use your product in the cooking demo. I will give one away. I will hand out tickets for, to get people to sit in the audience while we did 7 cooking demonstrations a day for 12 days. And then what we did is they say, if you really like this recipe, here it is, handed them that. If you really like the ingredient that we featured today, I mean, it was from peanut butter to ketchups, you name it, just go, down, the pathway there a little further, a few buildings is a Pride of New York. You can buy that product there. And every single time they said that they could tell when we did certain cooking demos that they came in and they bought that particular local product, and it was a cool connection. So here you create that ripple effect, and often those partners, we got them into other things that wherever we went, we sponsored the Utica Boilermaker, our largest 15K road race, beef racing, hello,
Yeah.
and they were looking for additional people to support them and sponsor, and I brought in peanut butter, and so I brought people along, and that's part of it, is that how can I help you and you help me and make this nice and big?
Gene, I love that. I love that you're thinking about those kind of connections. I think that's really smart for a number of reasons. How are you approaching that with Alverno? Are you do you have your eyes on certain organizations or certain targets, or how are you taking those lessons that you learned at the Beef Council and applying them to Alverno? I'd love to see where you're going with that.
How can we cross market to get it out there, to
Yeah.
maybe encourage our students to get into programs or galas or whatever, so that they can be seen and heard. Hey, we have an inauguration coming up. Who wants to help sponsor? And I mean, it's going to be the inauguration by, I joked, I said, American Family Field at Alverno College inauguration kind of thing. But how can we capitalize on that and work together to say, here you have an opportunity to say, as a sponsor or as a partner, saying, I'm helping support and educate young women to be future leaders, and to be part of that and be proud of that, and want to do that because of who we're producing, and or saying to
Yeah.
organizations, hey, we have students that can be awesome interns, and hey, we have students that are going to be phenomenal employees, and look what they've done, and play with us that way as well. That, you know if you don't toss money our way, or assist us that way, at least take our students on and give them the opportunity to learn something and put that as part of their CV and their repertoire, so that they can be better and out in the world and better leaders for our community. So it's, how can we match, and what's the best fit?
You talked earlier, you mentioned Christy Brown, the new president of Alverno. Talk to us about her view of marketing and how you guys have been working together.
Chrissy comes with a impressive acumen. She was with the Girl Scouts for 10 years, and really capitalized on that. Coming to Alverno, her her education background, what she did to get here, working in education in a number of different ways. The Girl Scouts, she's bringing a business acumen. She's bringing some education. She is a lawyer, through education through Duke, and taking all of those experiences, and again, putting it to say, how does this fit, and having a more global outlook as to taking Alverno and moving it forward, and for the next generation of learners. And she has some marketing background. I report to her, and we have some great conversations of, where should we go? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there?
That's awesome that you've got connected and you've got the ear of the president. A lot of people that I have talked to within the higher ed and marketing space, let's be honest, marketing is kind of an afterthought. A lot of organizations still, I believe, look at it as a necessary evil. They don't really see the benefits of that. That's nice that you're being brought in on things.
Yeah, it is important because, hey, if there's going to be cuts, what are the first things they cut is marketing, and it's the last thing you should cut. And I'm not saying it because I'm in marketing. I think it's because that's when things are going bad, that's when you need to scream louder and be put out there louder, or be um, more strategic in that. And I think I go back to the one podcast I was listening to with Ryan, and it was the fluid, what was it? Not fluid. It was not fluid marketing. It's
Agile.
agile marketer, and she was explaining that, and she was defining it. I'm like, wow, I think I fit that in that sense of, how can you look ahead, and I always told everybody, I still tell my team, look ahead, but look behind you to see what you missed, because you probably walked past something and you forgot to flip a stone, and maybe that'll give you something, an avenue that you didn't even think about. So it's always looking forward, backwards, and sideways, and keeping that in mind.
Gene, talk to us oh,
if I could, I just wanted to, I think it's an excellent point. Clearly there's support that's happening from on your end with the new president from a marketing perspective. And I will say, and Pat, I mean, having done this podcast now for nearly 3 years, it seems, again, as I go back to the theme that I'm kind of championing your theme. It's like finding that commonality versus the difference. We hear that all the time. It's like, and it doesn't matter if we're talking higher ed, manufacturing, technology. It's like those companies that are embracing, they don't have to be experts. A top individual doesn't need to be the expert, but if they are embracing marketing and all that goes with it and entrusting that in people below, that's where they're seeing the success versus the big disconnect at the top when maybe you have a CEO or a president who they look at marketing as if it's in another universe. It's a common theme. So that's where we're seeing, that's what we're hearing, and then I think it resonates, and we're hearing it from you too.
Yeah, you have to look at it a little bit differently. I mean, marketing, you don't have a website and you don't have social and you don't have somebody um, to talk about you or give somebody something to talk about. That was always the thing in beef is, hey, if I go and tell this butcher all this information, he's going to go tell 10 people. Because if Snapple, why do I love Snapple? That, when you take off the lid and it tells you, the potato became the first vegetable to be grown in space. Really? I mean, hey, that's like real fact, 1,283. If I could have figured out how to put that on a package of beef, I would have all day long. And that's it. It's that intellectual collateral that you get to share because you're going to go and home tonight and you're going to say, honey, did you know that the potato was the first vegetable grown in space? It just all you needed to do was give them that little nugget and all day long. And there's a ton of nuggets in the beef industry that you could give and talk about all day long. And the same here in higher ed or anywhere is there's all those like, behind, the one thing I didn't put on my CV is that I used to work at a Dairy Queen when I was a kid. And, hey, this is how you really make a blizzard kind of thing. And the experimenting with ice cream or the mix when it was a slow day and what we created. But it's just how can you put the fun facts out there what's going to make it contagious?
Like that.
Gene, you obviously are doing a lot. You don't do this all by yourself. Talk to us about your staff and how you've organized it so far. And if you could, if you're like maybe where you're going with the staff, I'm just be curious to understand that.
Great staff. I think empowering them to be creative and embracing that and guiding them and kind of mentoring them, getting them to think outside the box. Saying, hey, you know what? I don't want you writing, you know, all of this information. We have students and faculty and staff experts that can do it. And I want you to be an editor to them and be that managing editor to that instead of you sitting there pounding it out and opening your time up for something that to do that different thing, that maybe that fun, that creative, innovative thing to level it up. Um, Getting to think a little bit differently and how their impact is getting them to be drivers instead of be driven. Marketing oftentimes are being driven, especially in higher ed. Totally stole that from Purdue. I'm a great rip-off repurposer. We got that from the Beef Council, and there's 44 of us. We redid that, especially with the budgets that we had, which in New York I had none. But to drive that and push that and get people to think a little bit differently and giving them the confidence to do that, and the the bandwidth to do it, I think it's important. I mean, we all get bogged down, we all get beat up, and then it's like, hey, but look at what you did. And no matter where I've gone, food service or beef counselor here, I kind of secretly chuckle because when I walk in the door, I go, you have no idea, but you are going to produce more work in the next year than you ever did before, and you're not even going to know it. And they do. I did it in food. I did it at the beef council and here, and I'm like, you guys, do you realize what we've just done in the last year? And I just laugh because I knew I was going to make them do it, but they're more organized and they're it's better organization and better focus and more efficient. And once they do that, they're able to do more with less without the hardship of it.
Gina, that's really interesting. We've heard about the need for speed in so many different industries. Eh, How do you how do you manage that, and how do you teach that, Gene? Like, how do you get that into your staff of being able to do that? Because that's an accomplishment, right?
It's priority shifting. I mean, I lost a web person recently, and that's a big thing, especially when you're trying to rebuild your website.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what's important? Let's look at, hey, I've got this massive list of things to do. And I'm like, but what's really important? What's the pants and fire? And my big thing is does it need a AED machine, or can we use a Band-Aid? Is it bleeding? Is it dying? If it's not, then let's not worry about it. Let's do this because this might need it, and we can run back to that. And
Yep.
there's no, it's nothing's going to jump off the cliff or fall off the cliff. I think I did it with my kids, and they'd come with me, to this big problem. Oh my God! And I go, is there anybody bleeding or are there any bones showing? No. I go, okay, no problem. Let's go. And I'm like, no big deal. So I guess it's kind of when everybody thinks the pants are on fire, and you look at it, and you go, Nobody's dying,"
Yeah.
and yeah do we really need this right now, or can we take a moment, refocus, and move forward? And I think it's kind of refocusing that thought process.
You mentioned that you're a big reader.
Huge.
What are you reading, Gene? How do you keep up on in the marketing space and just to stay relevant and find out what's going on?
I go back and forth because when you read enough, business books, your brain goes crazy.
Yep.
And I mean, I'll be at the gym and I'll be listening to a podcast, stop, and then no, I got to remember this. This is a really good idea. Taking bits and pieces of it and say, okay, how does this fit? Constantly, like, how does that fit? You can see behind me in the Zoom all my fun books. I'm a social science geek, so it's like, what did Malcolm Gladwell, or any of those guys, Chip Heath, Dan Heath, Simon Sinek, Jonah Berger, Seth Godin, Adam Grant. Heck, listening to Adam Grant and Simon Sinek on a podcast is hysterical. When I got into higher ed, finding out, what that one podcast I was listening to is higher educational marketer. Bart Kaler does it, and that's where I was like, it was again a fire hose of what did somebody else do that I could rip off and repurpose so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think that's a lot of things that people think that they have to invent something new. I thought some of my concept with what I wanted to do with some social media here was like, wow, I'm being unique. I'm going to run my social media like a newsroom in a sense. And I'm listening to the podcast and I'm hearing how so and so did it. I'm like, oh, well, I'm naive to think that. I'm like, well, that's welcome to a new job or a new focus, and then be able to reach out to that person and be like, how did you do this? And what did you use? Found this awesome third party app that we can utilize to put out there. And I was like, this is cool. Did you just made my life a lot easier kind of thing.
Right.
So, but listening to podcasts that I've listened to that you didn't think I would get something more out of, like Armchair Expert, I mean, Dak Shepard, and he brings in social sciences, all different people. And I'm like, that's really cool. I want to know more about it. End up reading that book. There was a book I read recently, Whistling Vivaldi, and
Mm.
it was uh, learning about gender bias, ethnic bias, and everything. It was a phenomenon of a lot of numbers, and I needed to read a beach read after that one, but it was just a lot of interesting facts about that. To reading then The Perfectionist Trap by Thomas Curran, or The Hidden Psychology of Social Networks. I'll listen to it on a book on tape, and then I'll end up buying the doggone book and then highlighting because I want to go back and do it. I write in my books. I've like loose leaf or whatever. Yeah, I'm constantly reading or listening when I have a chance.
Gene O'Toole, keep kicking ass.
No,
In
thank you.
it, and thank you so much for being on the pod. This is the
Thanks
part
so
of the
much for
show.
the opportunity. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, this is your chance, Gene. Like, how do people find out a little bit more about you, about Alverno? Whatever you want to plug, this is your turn. Have at it.
Gino Tool on LinkedIn. You can get my contact information out there, or it's jotool512 at Gmail, or reach out to me at Alverno. Check out Alverno EDU. Brand new front page. Woo! Check out the Abilities if you know somebody that is looking for a college and is struggles with grades or that hierarchy of grades or that competition. This is a place to go to actually really learn. And if you know it, show it is the idea here, and experience it. Sometimes walking on a campus and you really get the feel of the community. And yeah, just I'm an open book, obviously. And if you really want some ideas about beef or how to cook it or cut it or what the cuts are, or by all means, I'll be more than happy to give you some insider tips on what to do with that. But if you're gonna have a steak, it's got to be medium rare all day long, and a New York strip. New
Gene
York
O'Toole.
strip, medium rare.
Gene O'Toole, thank you very much for being on the
Thank you,
pod. That's a
Gene.
wrap.
Thank you.